Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History, Avec Hemingway. And today we're talking about all the famous fashion museums around Paris. So this episode is for you fashionistas, or maybe you're looking to visit a museum based around fashion that you haven't done yet in Paris. Claudine's going to teach us about some of the top ones in the city.
Yeah, there are a few. And what's even better is they're all really close to each other. So a lot of times when I'm doing planning for clients for their trips to Paris and they really want fashion, I was like, do spend like, 3/4 of a day over here and you could hit them all in one day.
Yeah.
And so we are going to start at the amazing, and I know we've mentioned it a few times in different episodes, but the amazing Galerie Dior. And this is the Dior Museum that opened up just within the last year. I don't even think it was a whole year ago, but it is amazing. And I think you have been as well. And it is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's so incredible. Even if you don't even care about fashion or whatever, you should go.
Exactly. That's what I always tell people. I was like, even if you're not into fashion and you don't really care, just go. It's visually amazing. I think it was back in 2017, the Musée des Arts Décoratifs did a huge exhibit of Dior. And I remember going to see it. And there was one part when you walk into the main center area of where the permanent collection is of the decorative. I literally walked in and was like, my mouth was open and I was like, holy cow, like this is just amazing. And it was all of these different mannequins with a lot of these famous dresses. Like they had the dress that Princess Diana wore and different celebrities that wore to like the Oscars and stuff like that. And they were just on all these risers, and it was just amazing. And I didn't think anything could top that. And this museum does that tenfold. It's fantastic. From the second you walk in the door and you go in and you take the elevator up, you're in that stairwell where everything on the wall is basically everything they make, shoes and purses and clothes. The clothes look like they could be for Barbies. And then all of the bags and shoes and everything, they were all created with a 3D printer. And it's all like ombre rainbow. So it's just absolutely fantastic. And you're going to try to stand there and get every way that you could try to get a picture of it to get them all in, but it's kind of impossible, but it is great. But we'll give you a little history behind it. So it is in a building that was once the home to Baron Haas von Blackroder. He came from a very wealthy banking family and he moved into this building in 1910. It was built in 1897. But 3 years later, and he's not exactly like, I had never heard about him. I never knew his name. So most likely nobody's going to know his name. But there was a very specific incident of his life that's not so great. At the start of September in 1913, a woman named Princess Sophie of Saxe-Weimar paid a visit to Paris to see him with her mother. On September 13th, they went for a drive through the forest of Fontainebleau, and their car hit a child and injured them.
Uh-oh.
The child survived, not to start this off on another grim note. Like the one, I think it was last week, where it was one grim thing after another. But the child, was fine. Excuse me, and survived. The princess and her mother fled and went back to Warsaw as the heat basically increased over him, and said that he said that he wasn't in the car. He said it was a young princess that had been driving the car, which is not so nice. Yeah. She was so upset about it. September 17th, that's just a few days later, she went back to the palace bedroom in Warsaw and shot herself and died.
That's horrible.
So I guess I did have a little bit of a grim note on that one.
But
it was this definitely a famous, and this fall, if you look them up, I mean, it really took some digging to get all the information to find any, a lot of stuff on this, just because, neither one of them are very well known. They're not some big, huge page of history. So, but it did take, you can find some information about this. It just was a little bit, more difficult, but he ended up later on dying himself. The next door neighbor at number 13, that next building, number 11 is where the Dior store is. Number 13 was once the home of Martine Marie Paul de Beignet. She was the Countess of Bern. She was the daughter of Octavia de Bayonne, who was a very wealthy art collector. And in 1890, she married René Marie Hector de Bern. And by 1920, the two ended in divorce. But after her parents died, she used her vast inheritance to purchase this home, and as she renovated another building that her parents owned on Rue Saint Dominique in 1888.
Oh,
Yeah, as one needs one palace to live in while they redo the other one.
You can never
But
have enough palaces.
never have enough. But right here on the corner, number 11 and 13 is the Dior flagship store. Or I should say, it's right around the corner from the flagship store, which is just right on that same block. But the address of it is 30 Avenue Montaigne. And that is where Christian Dior saw this building, and he knew he had to have it. They moved in on December 16th, 1946. He saw that, like, from the moment he saw that building one day, he's like, that's the building I need. That's the building I want to live in, and have my store. And it's been in Dior's name ever since, which is really cool. I love that when you could go into a place, it's same with another place we're going to talk about today. And it's not just, the Picasso Museum in the Marais. It has nothing to do with Picasso. It wasn't his studio. It wasn't his home. It wasn't any of those things. But when you could go into a place, it's like, this was where Dior created. This is where he sketched everything. This is where they have the shows. That's really, for me, that's really cool.
Yeah, really special.
Yeah, but this building has an interesting history. And when I went in there, so when they redid these, this building, it actually, where the Dior Museum at number 11 is, they did it so it links up to the Avenue Montaigne store. So they basically like cut through the wall, but and connected these two. And when you're in the museum, when you go into that building, there is a sign there, and it's a very visible difference. You go down a hallway, and then all of a sudden you're in this beautiful staircase with marble floor, and there's a sign on the wall. And when I saw this, I got very excited, because in 1865, Alexander Walewski, and you might not know his name, but he was the very first child and illegitimate son of Napoleon Bonaparte.
No way.
Yeah. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, what? Like, God, you love my Napoleon history. But he had this built, but died before it was finished. His wife moved in afterwards, and then sold it later. She didn't live there for very long. She sold it. His mother was a Warsaw princess, and she ended up meeting Napoleon. She was married, and she ended up meeting Napoleon, and Napoleon, of course, obviously had a little bit of a dalliance affair with her. And then she got pregnant, but she was married to Alexander Walewski. And later, he ended up saying that, no, this is my son. There was never a question. But in 2013, they did a DNA test on the descendants and found that, yes, they were related to Napoleon Bonaparte.
Score.
Yeah. So that's when, also, as a side note, he was married to Josephine, which we still need to do a couple episodes about her. But he was married to Josephine, and she was older than him. But, a lot of people make it sound like, she was like 30 years older than him and walking around, with a cane. But she was like 6 years older than him. Not that old.
Yeah.
She had 2 children before. And she wasn't getting pregnant with Napoleon. But then he all of a sudden ended up sowing the seeds over there in Poland, and found that, like, okay, yes, it's not me. All my things are working. And so that was part of it. But when you see, and I'll put a picture of Alexander on my website, when you see this photo of him, knowing especially the latter years Napoleon, when he's a little rounder, there's no question that this kid was not Napoleon's. He looked just like him, like exactly like him. But he ended up coming over to Paris. And then his uncle, Napoleon III, ended up getting him a job. And at different points, he actually was a French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was a minister of state. He was a president of the legislative body. He did all of this. He did a lot of stuff in France. And so he ended up coming to Paris. And his Napoleon III recognized him as his family. and then also Alexander at that point. But we talked about him before when we did the podcast episode about Rachel Felix, who
Mhm.
was the one that was like the first international like stage star. She ended up having her own little dalliance with Alexander and got pregnant and had his son.
Man, they were just sleeping with
I
everybody,
know. Well, she also slept with Napoleon III.
as one does.
It's a very tangled, it's a very tangled web, but not very tangled.
It's all connected.
When you draw the dots, you know, the lines of French history, those lines aren't very long.
Yeah.
But it is interesting when you find that it's like, oh, gross, you slept with the uncle and the nephew.
Yeah, like come on.
I know. But his story is really interesting. And there's a little plaque there. And when I saw that, I loved this building even more. I thought it was just amazing. Further down the street at number 24, is where, and this is Rue Francois Premier. Sorry, I should have said that from the beginning. At number 24 is where Alfred and Louis Dreyfus lived. Louis Dreyfus is very famous because most people have all heard about the Dreyfus Affair. That occurred from 1894 to 1906, and that is definitely something that we should cover in a whole episode that we were just talking about before we started. But the Dreyfus Affair, but here's a fun fact about Dreyfus. A lot of people know that name because of Julie Louis Dreyfus, you know, famous from Seinfeld,
Yeah.
the actress. She's related to him.
Wait, she's actually related to him?
She's related to him, and their family is insanely wealthy. And I was just at the Orangerie seeing an exhibit, the Sam Safran exhibit. And if you look at all the plaques, which I do because I'm taking a million notes and everything, and they will say on the plaque that a lot of the paintings in there are from the family up, and some of them say Julie Louis Dreyfus.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so she's actually like related, like, you know, when they made a lot of money on Seinfeld when it got huge. I think they were, it was probably like Friends when they were getting like $1 million an episode, but that's chump change to what her family had.
That's wild. I didn't know she was related to him.
Yeah, so we'll do a whole episode. The Dreyfus Affair like split all of Paris. It was a big, huge basis of anti-Semitism that's still going everywhere in France. But it's and Emile Zola got into it. So we'll do a whole episode explaining all of that. There's way too much to do today, but it's I just love the fact that that's actually her family.
Yeah, that's wild. I just thought they shared a name.
Yeah. So see, if history, it brings you right back to here.
Brings me to Seinfeld.
Yeah, exactly. All roads lead to Seinfeld too. But right around the corner from that is Avenue Georges V. It's basically the 8th and the 16th. The 8th and the 16th have funny little lines that go through Paris. So some of this is in the 8th, some of this in the 16th. Georges V, George V, is most people know that as the hotel, but this was actually the street, but the hotel lives on there. In 1928, a gentleman named André Terrel, who owned La Tour d'Argent, which we also just talked about a couple weeks ago, he and Georges Weibo took on the design of a new luxurious hotel that was founded by an American named Joel Hillman. And on October 24th, 1929, which was Black Friday, Hillman lost all of his money and he was forced to sell his hotel. Francois Dupré was the next up as owner in 1931 and added a whole additional wing to onto the hotel. And a few other owners have passed until 1997 when the current owner took over. His name is Prince Al-Walid of Saudi Arabia. I tried to make that French. He managed on his own until he asked the Four Seasons to step over and take it. Today there's 244 hotel rooms in there, and they just started a cool 1,900 euros a night.
What?
Yeah, 1,900 euros a night.
Wow.
So it is quite expensive. And if you go there, I've popped in there just to go and see. If you're walking around, just go by there just to pop into the lobby, because the flowers in the lobby are done by the American florist Jeff Latham. He does an amazing, they're always just, sometimes they're like 400 stems of orchids. They're just absolutely fantastic. But George V, where you might know that because he was an English king. He ruled from 1865 to 1936, and he was also known as Dirty Birdie.
Uh-oh.
But that's a whole nother episode, and maybe not for maybe that's a late
Adult.
night episode we could do, but episode that's only listened to at night without children.
Exactly. We need some
Yeah,
parental guidelines.
yeah. Just down the street from the George Sank at number 23 is the American Episcopal Church. That's the Holy Trinity. It's a Greek revival church that was designed by British architect George Edmund Street and constructed in 1881. The spire that's on the street on the church was added in 1904, and it was designed by his son, Arthur Edmund Street.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that. But it is, you might know this one if you've been into the Orsay, and there is a painting by Jean Barrault who did this that is called the Sunday Service, and has all these very fancy people of the Belle Epoque period leaving church, getting ready to go into their carriages. And so that's when I first found out about the American church, was because of that painting.
I found out about them from the Bloom program.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, there's two American churches. So there's the Episcopal, and then there's what, the American Cathedral?
Yeah, so there's the American Cathedral and the American Church, and they're like right down the street from each other.
Yeah, pretty close to each other. And the this one, I think the spire, and it's one of those ones that sticks up like forever. I was like, what is that? What is that spire attached to? And then finally one day I went up there to find it and figure it out, but you couldn't just walk in the church.
No, they have a lot of security. And the funny thing about the American Cathedral, which is by George Sank and all that, is they don't actually have any bells in their tower because during the war they needed the metal to make weapons. So they have a giant like bell tower with no bells in it.
Oh,
Yeah. It's actually apartments now in the bell tower where guest priests can stay.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Kind of like at Sacre Coeur.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. Yeah, that's kind of to it. Somebody should get them some new bells.
Yeah, they need some bells.
Yeah, let's do a fundraiser. We need bells.
The music ring.
That so right across going from church, maybe you go to the church after you go to this place. Just down the street from that is where Crazy Horse is. Crazy Horse is a cabaret much like the Moulin Rouge, but let's just turn the notch up a little bit on the sexier side.
We're really going like R-rated for this episode.
It is R-rated. We might as well go into Dirty Birdie. But it opened on May 19th, 1951. It was a mix of an American striptease club and exotic dance club that came along long after the Moulin Rouge, of course. And it kind of shocked Paris. In 1954, Miss Cadida started her popular routine of taking a bath on stage, which she did more than 500 times.
Wait, why the bath on stage?
Just because I don't know, because then everybody got to watch her, suds up there in the bathtub.
I mean, it's a show. Yep, it's
a show. But then later, Dita Von Teese, who is a very famous American cabaret dancer, she also did it, and then Pamela Anderson of Baywatch fame also did it. I
love that they carried on the tradition.
They carried on this tradition. I don't think Pamela Anderson, maybe she's do it again, because I think she's just like, I don't know what she even does anymore.
She takes care of animals.
She takes care of animals.
She's using the PETA or whatever.
Oh, just like Bridget Bardot. They go from being a sex symbol to taking care of animals.
Exactly.
How sweet. So now back to fashion. We go around this corner to Avenue Monceau. And this is where the Musée Yves Saint Laurent is. It's a very small museum, but do not miss this one. It is absolutely fantastic. And you'll see Yves Saint Laurent if you go into the Dior Museum, because he worked for Dior in 1955. He took over right when Dior had his very untimely death. And so he was at Dior from 1955 until 1957. Till 1962. Dior died in 1957. And he was like that. And when you go into the Dior Museum, it's really cool. There's one area and has all these huge screens, and kind of shows all the different designers that have come for the label. And it's really neat because Yves Saint Laurent has a very distinctive style that we all know of. But last year, earlier in the year, the 60th anniversary was marked of the very first show that Yves Saint Laurent did of his own collection. And it was done in 6 museums across the city, including the Louvre. And it was really cool because they did each one. So it was kind of tied into what that space was. So the Louvre was in the Galerie d'Apollon. So all they were jackets, and I think there's 4 or 5 of them, but they were all like over the top. They had all this gold on it, and even had huge beading on it, and had a whole back that kind of looked like it was a shattered mirror, but it wasn't obviously done with glass. But it was really, really cool. It was really well done, and it was all over, 6 different museums in the city. But you could go to the Yves Saint Laurent Museum anytime. In 1974, this is where he moved his office to this location. He worked here until he announced his retirement on January 7th, 2002. That very same year, Yves Saint Laurent and his partner created the Pierre Berge and Yves Saint Laurent Foundation. On June 1st, 2008, Yves Saint Laurent took his last breath, losing his battle with brain cancer. It was really sad and horrible. They found out he had brain cancer, but Pierre, his partner, the doctor at one point said, he only has this short amount of time to live. And they decided not to tell Yves Saint Laurent because they just said it would be too hard for him to know, like you have whatever it was, weeks left to live. And just like, so he could just go on with his life, his life the best he could at that time. He loved the big thing that you'll notice when you go to the museum, because they left his office as it was, and it's amazing to see this. His bookcases are just filled with art books, because he was really inspired by art, and he brought a lot of that into his designs. There's whole collections that he did. There's one that he did that was inspired by Georges Braque. He had one that a jacket that he made off of Picasso portrait that Picasso did, a Cubist portrait, and Yves Saint Laurent turned that into a jacket. So, but he loved art. And my friend Jacques that works for the Louvre said that he saw Yves Saint Laurent in the Louvre about 10 days before he died.
Oh, can you imagine? That's so sad.
So sad. But his earlier life, he was into a lot of drugs, and I've seen some movies. That movie that was done a few years ago, it's a French movie, and had Gaspard, who just recently, I think it was a year ago, that died in that ski accident. He played Yves Saint Laurent, and that was like, wow. I mean, when he was kind of starting to come up, the drugs he was doing, and just kind of the putting his life kind of on the edge, it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
But Yves Saint Laurent was a genius, and I think to be that influential and that creative, kind of had something else had to come with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's lucky he survived all that.
Yeah, but the museum itself is really cool. It has sometimes it does close for a couple of weeks at a time because it changes over exhibits. It's pretty much a museum that's exhibit driven. Right now, the current one is I think it's called Gold, and so it's all clothing that's gold, and I can't wait to go and to check it out. But it's really, really well done. It's a small museum. It's not one that's going to take you a lot of time, so that's why you could really do these things. You could do these 3 museums in a row, and definitely in a day, do 2 before lunch, and do another one after lunch, as it's pretty quick to see it. But it's really cool. It's open Tuesday through Sunday at 11 to 6 and 9 o'clock on Thursdays. But it's really well done. Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Berge also had an insane art collection. There was huge auctions years and years ago after Pierre Berge died. And there's actually, I was in the Louvre one day and found there was a painting that on the plaque, as I read all of them, it said that it was donated by Pierre and Yves Saint Laurent. And then I was looking at something just yesterday, this article that I think it was in Vogue, France Vogue, and it had the painting in the room. It was about there's a new book out about all of the houses that Yves Saint Laurent had. And they had amazing antiques, and like, I really actually just want to flip through this book or get it. But in the book, it had this painting that's in the Louvre was in the picture of his living room.
Wow, that's so cool. I visited his house in Morocco,
Oh,
and that was beautiful.
I would die to go see that. I really, because they love Morocco and they ended up moving down there and buying a house. I would love to go see that. It's the number one thing I want to go down and see in Morocco.
Yeah, it's worth it. Well worth it.
Very cool. So the last museum that we have is literally about a block away from this. You walk out the door, you take a left, and you basically run straight into it. And that is the Palais Galliera. And this was originally this was a palace. This woman, her name was she was Italian. Her name was Marie Brignole de Ferrari de Galliera. We need Giuseppe to probably tell me that I did that all wrong, but I tried to terminate everything French. She was born in Italy in 1811, and her father loved Paris. He served as the ambassador and also minister of state under Napoleon. Marie was married off to Raphael de Ferrari. I don't think it's connection to the car, not that I could find, in 1828, but her affection for Paris couldn't keep her in Italy very long. So she left her husband behind, as any good woman should do, and headed back to Paris to be there. In 1878, Marie offered the city of Paris a plot of land and an offer to build a palace to hold her art collection. The deals were signed, and architect Leon Genin designed a small palace, but things turned sideways when Clemenceau backed a new law targeting immigrant descendants that stayed in France. It was supposed to be that if you, like her father, working for the minister, she was fine, but after he died, they were basically like, unless you're a part of French society and you can live here, you need to go, which is, pretty much what they do now.
Yeah.
But she returned to Genoa with her huge art collection. She was so mad about it. She was also a very, very devout Catholic, and they were getting rid of having religion in the schools. That actually even made her even more mad. But she said that she wasn't going to give the city, she would try to rescind her offer, but it was too late. The paperwork on the building the palace and the land was done, but she decided to take her art collection back to Italy, take her toys and go home. In 1888, she died, never to see the finished palace. But in 1895, it was open as a temporary exhibition place. And in 1902, it was a contemporary industrial art museum. In 1920, it opened as the first fashion museum in Paris, and the current incarnation dates to 1977. The inner frame structure is very small. It's not a very big museum. This is the smallest of all of them. The inner frame structure was designed by the Eiffel Tower Company. And today, when you go inside, you can look up and kind of see some of those pieces. They also, they just in the last year added in the basement, they did a renovation. And in the basement, it's a rotating collection. The city of Paris actual fashion collection is in there. So they have everything from like dresses that Marie Antoinette wore to the very first Jean Levan gowns, all of that kind of stuff. It was funded by that company that shall not be named with the C. But it's actually, well, that's kind of cool because that's what I would love to see. They do right now. The exhibit is dedicated to Frida Kahlo, the artist, because she used fashion in her pieces so much, but it's also a lot of her own fashion. So it does again close in between sometimes. And both of these, the YSL and the Galliera, new exhibits are always tied to Fashion Week. So usually exhibits are going to run, the new ones get to start in September, and then the next new one will start in like March or April.
Yeah.
So usually I'll do it so it has its opening like right at the start of Fashion Week because that's when everybody's there. But the Palais Galliera, I think what's even more beautiful is a little square on the outside of it. It's just absolutely lovely. It has a fountain in the center, and it is done. It has in the very middle of it, it's by Pierre Rocher, and it's titled Avril. It was created in 1916. And this one's really cool because you could actually walk up to the back steps on the back side of the museum, which normally you can't do. And there's some really neat sculptures up there. In the nicer months of the year, there is a cafe that's right next to it, except for I did try to go there one day. And I think it was in about September. And I sat there for about 40 minutes, a half an hour to 40 minutes, and asked 4 times if I could order while I watched people that came in after me sit down, order, eat, and leave. And finally, I just got up and left. But I was really excited because they usually do the menu tied to the exhibit, and it said nachos on the menu.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. So I was so mad that I didn't get to have it. But I was also so mad that I asked like 4 times if somebody could help me, and they didn't. They were like, they said, "Oh, yes, yes, we'll be right there." But
Oh
I
man,
missed the nachos.
you missed out on the
I
nachos.
missed out on the nachos. Another museum that's not fashion, that's right across the street that you should definitely check out is the Musée d'Art Moderne of Paris, the Museum of Modern Art. This is the City of Paris Museum. So it's one of those ones that's free, except for if they're doing a special exhibit. But sometimes the special exhibits can be free. This one's really cool because you can see some paintings by Sonia Delaunay, who we did a podcast episode about. But there's also the amazing Raoul Dufy that did the huge painting called it's basically the electricity fairy, La Vieille Electricité. It was painted in 1951. It's 250 plywood panels that stretch 33 by 20 feet. It's in an oval room. The colors are amazing. If you like Chagall, you would love this. It has that very dreamy, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And this is not a museum a lot of people go to. It's usually very, very quiet. But there was a little episode that happened there one night, and somebody had actually in 2010, it was late at night between May 19th and 20th. For weeks the alarm in the museum were damaged and they were waiting to be repaired. So somehow somebody knew this. A gentleman named Virgin Tomic was working on behalf of an art dealer named Jean-Michel Corvy, and they found out that it wasn't working. In the middle of the night, Tomic was known as Spider-Man, crawled through a window and stole 5 paintings. And these paintings were Picasso. There was Henry Matisse Pastoral done in 1905, Georges Braque's Olive Tree near Estaquique in 1906, Legier's 1922 painting Still Life with Candlesticks, and Modigliani painting. And there was guards on duty, but they didn't know this was even happening. The paintings were valued over 1 million euros, and they were taken to a copyist named Jonathan Bern when he heard of the news of the arrest of his. So they ended up finding the Spider-Man, and then he of course gave up, the art dealer. And they were arrested. And when Jonathan heard this, he thought, oh my gosh, I got to get rid of these paintings. I don't want them to find me. So he said he threw them in the trash.
Oh my gosh.
And they were picked up. And to this day, they have never been found.
No way.
Yeah. So it's definitely one of the biggest art heists in that, except for there's the one that's in Boston, the Gardner Museum. That's another huge one that those paintings have never been found. And that includes like Manet's and everything. But this was a big one because he said that he just was worried. So he basically tossed them into the garbage, and they were probably picked up and taken to a landfill. Or
maybe someone has them in their living room.
Yeah. Hopefully they're hiding, and someday these things will all come out.
Yeah, could you imagine you just walk by the trash and you're like, oh, I like these paintings. Let me just take them home.
Well, there's stories all the time of somebody found this in their attic and they didn't, they don't know what this is. And then they find out all of a sudden that this is an unknown Renoir and it's worth $4 million or something. I never have seen those because I love those stories and I get all of the different art industry newsletters. And I see these a lot, but I want one day for it to be like they looked into the provenance of it and it was stolen from a museum.
Yeah.
Or it was, better yet, recovered. It was one that the Nazis stole and now we could recover it and send it back to the family. That would be even better.
Even better. I watched that What About the Boston Museum? That was a fascinating documentary. They don't know anything.
They don't know anything. And then they left the frames empty, hanging on the walls.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Still to this day.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
What a heist.
Very cool.
Well, guys, now you know all the best museums to visit as far as fashion goes. And don't forget to follow ClaudineHemingway.com on her website, book her for tours, book her for private trip planning, and tune in next week.
Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, claudinehemingway.com.